welcome to Men at the Movies, the YouTube channel. My name is Paul McDonald, and this week we are talking about The Guardian, the movie with Ashton Kutcher and Kevin Costner and some other guys you'll recognize. It's great. Dustin Oprea and I talked about it a little more fully on the podcast, but there was a scene we weren't able to get to. Dustin had some time constraints, so we had to cut our talk a little short. So there's a guy in their class. So it's Coast Guard class, sort of like Top Gun for the Coast Guard, maybe. This is his third time through, but there's a stage that he can't pass. And the test is rescuing somebody with a panicked swimmer. And Charlie is unable to pass. Every time he panics, he gets taken underwater. He just can't fight off the panicked swimmer. We see, Ashton Kutcher's character and the other guys in his group cheering him on. The instructors are also cheering him on. But take a look and see what shifts in Charlie that might be applicable for the shift that we need in our lives.
Again! I'm a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. I'm here to help you. I'm out.
Like, he's known what's coming, but up till now, he hasn't been able to pass the test. He hasn't been able to do what it takes to get that panicked swimmer off of him. But what causes the shift? What gives him the courage to elbow his instructor in the nose, right? To get a good shot in, to get off me, basically.
Guess it was a lucky punch.
Arch! You stay right there. Well done, Charlie. Well done. Hoorah, Chief Skinner! That's 5506! Hoorah, Hodge on 3! 1, 2, 3! Hoorah, Hodge!
Good for you.
And this scene resonates because we know what that feels like. When you go over to the in-laws' house and the same topic comes up and there's a fight, or the same thing happens with your kids or your wife, you're like, oh, I know this situation. This ends the same way every time. And what do? You start avoiding the situation, right? But what if we can take that situation like Charlie? He knew what was going to happen, and yet he had been unable to do it. He wasn't assertive enough. He wasn't aggressive enough. And I think there's a question of identity here. He saw himself as a student needing to pass a test from a teacher, from a person of authority. But what he saw himself in is this idea that, no, I am a rescue personnel, a rescue diver, rescue swimmer, whatever they call them. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get through this. And what would that shift look like for us? What would that shift look like for me? This idea came to me a few weeks ago. I was reading in Matthew 9 in the Message version. Back in the boat, Jesus and the disciples recrossed the sea to Jesus' hometown. They were hardly out of the boat when some men carried a paraplegic on a stretcher and set him down in front of them. Jesus, impressed by their bold belief, said to the paraplegic, "Cheer up, son. I forgive your sins." And then he goes into this whole conversation with the Pharisees about whether it's easier to forgive sins or say, get up and walk. And of course he says, get up and walk. The guy walks out of there because who knows if you actually forgave sins or not, but you can see if a miracle like get up and walk, it's more tangible, physical, you can see it. And the interesting thing throughout that rest of that chapter is there's more evidence of bold belief. The woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, and The Chosen did a great episode on her story of her desperation, of her need, of how she'd gone to doctor after doctor. They'd made it worse, how she was unclean, ostracized, she was in isolation. But she said her bold belief was, if I can just touch his cloak, I can be healed. And she did. And it stopped Jesus in his tracks. He says, whoa, power went out of me. Who touched me? And then what he said is, one, he called her daughter, which is an amazing thing, but he says, your faith has made you well. Your bold belief has made you well. And again, that's the same story with Jairus, with his daughter. Jesus, if you see her, if you touch her, you can heal her. And then continuing on, because she died on the way, in that faith, it's amazing how often Jesus says, your faith has healed you. And for me, I go through life a lot, not with bold belief. I go through with, I make a decision and immediately regret it or second guess it. Oh, this wasn't the right path. This wasn't the right choice. Whether it's with your job, reacting to your kids, to my wife, where to go on vacation, whether or not to go on vacation. Basically, if there's a decision that can be made, I tend to second guess it. I tend to have buyer's remorse rather immediately. So what would it be like to have bold belief? What would it be like to say, yeah, I made this choice. And instead of saying, God, are you with me? God, did I make the right choice? It's almost like walking with a foot on each side of the fence of, yes, I made this choice, but I need a safety net in case it was the wrong one. Of trusting, almost like a child jumping into a pool to the waiting arms of their father to know, yeah, I that pool's deep. I can't swim, but my dad will catch me. And it's that bold belief that we see in Charlie as he elbows his instructor and says, no, I'm doing this. I'm doing what it takes. This might get me kicked out too. I know not passing this test will get me kicked out of school. Elbowing you in the face might, but I need to do what it takes to pass this test. I need to do what it takes to get you off me. And so when we go forward this week, do that. Look at it, say, where is that trap coming from? That, hey, I made this decision, this feeling, this fear, this anxiety, this stress, this anger, this situation happened like it always does. But how can you respond differently in a way that you can pass the test like Charlie does and get a well done from both the people around you and from your father who's watching? So for a more in-depth discussion of this movie, check out our podcast, Men at the Movies. Links are all below, or just search wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you like it, share it, subscribe, do all the things. And we hope you join us next time here on Men at the Movies, the YouTube channel.